Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. Um, got an episode today where my guest is in Taiwan. It was it's first for me. I haven't spoken to somebody in Taiwan. I've spoken to somebody in Japan. So we talk a little bit of how his way to get to Taiwan was via a 2-day layover that just turned into a couple of years of him hanging out in Taiwan. So we've got some really good stories. Tom helps wellness practitioners close more business, double their business by some really simple principles that I think could be applied to just about anyone, anybody in sales. His little idea, I shouldn't say little, but his idea of um, what why is a simple way to think about asking questions to get to somebody's reasons for why they're going to do something and why it's important today and for them to move forward, especially if you're in a shorter sales cycle. But the principles are there. Some great marketing ideas. So go grab a cigar, grab a cocktail, strap in for another fun episode of Sales and Cigars. Thank you. So Tom, thanks for taking some time to jump on the podcast with me. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, not a problem. Glad to be here.
So let's start with you're in Taiwan. And right now it's February 2nd at 1:35 in the afternoon, Eastern time. What day is it in Taiwan?
It is Friday, February 3rd at 2:36 a.m. in the morning.
Dude, that early in the morning?
Yeah.
Are you up that just because that's what you have to do for clients and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I support US and UK clients, so that's kind of part of the deal, which isn't a problem. I mean, don't feel too bad for me. I sleep until 10. So it's like I get my 8 hours.
It's just a different rhythm.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, all right. That makes me feel better. Why Taiwan?
So, great question, and kind of funny answer. I've never actually been to Taiwan before living here, and it was March of 2020. I was leaving the Philippines. I was living there for about 5 months, and I was literally on the last flight out of the airport before they shut down the country because of COVID. And so I had a 2-day layover in Taiwan, and I was going back to the US, going to do some events, and all these events started to shut down and close and stop. And so I was sitting there in my hotel room, and I was like, gosh, this seems really bad. I'm not sure if I want to continue back to the US right now. And so I didn't. So I just canceled the second leg of my flight back to Houston. And, that 2-day layover has turned into 3 years now.
You haven't gone back to Houston in that time, like to get a
I
sweater or something?
Yeah, actually, I just sold my house this year in Houston. So I've been back twice, but, or now 3 times back to the US. But yeah, it's, people ask, why did you choose Taiwan? And I always say, well, I think Taiwan chose me because here I am. Yeah.
Or COVID chose you. One of the
Right, exactly. Which interesting. I've not had COVID in 3 years. At least I've never tested positive for COVID. I don't think I have had it, but it's kind of a weird thing. I was with my family a couple of weeks ago, and they're like, "Yeah, no, I haven't had it." So,
and you're close to the source.
Yeah, exactly.
And the rest of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, talking about COVID is like now it's a triumphant, right? Religion, politics, and COVID. Those 3 things, right? We just got to stay away from those topics.
Absolutely.
Because we all have our beliefs and our reasons for them. But they have a tendency to piss off certain people at certain times for different reasons. So
yeah, exactly.
I didn't get COVID until June of last year. And I was in a house that everybody had it. Everybody else was inoculated or vaccinated, right? Whatever the right word is. I wasn't, and didn't get it until I took my mom to the emergency room for one evening and came back with it.
Wow.
So it it's like the ER is one of the most dangerous
Oh,
places
yeah.
because they make you wear the mask, but
Yeah.
nobody goes and washes the chairs that people are
Oh,
sitting in and coughing on, and get because there's sometimes there's sick people that show up in the emergency room.
yeah. A couple
And
times.
they just don't wash it down. So, but it was like the flu. I've had a worse flu than that. Just feel like I needed to take a nap. So congratulations, you've avoided it.
Yeah. For now, anyway.
Yeah,
So not quite.
it's not the end of the world.
That's,
So let's kind of talk a little bit about your business, who your ideal client, uh, what their profile looks like. I call it a dot. Like who's that look like, and so
mm.
why?
Yeah, good. So I came out of the fitness industry. So I had a fitness center in Houston for 10 years. And I sold that 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. And that's when kind of started my digital nomad experience. So I have no like office or anything like that. So for the last 4 years, I've been just kind of traveling the world and operating a business. So typically the people that I work with are fitness centers and medical doctors, and typically in the wellness space. So holistic medical providers, functional medicine doctors, chiropractors,
Chiropractors? Yeah.
yeah, chiropractors, naturopaths, and really just helping them with their conversions of leads into patients or clients. Because that's something when I had my fitness center was just a huge problem for me. Because you'd be working all day as a practitioner on the floor. You'd have 3 or 4 leads come in through your online marketing. You're done at 8 o'clock at night. You're like, oh, I'm really tired. I don't know if I want to call anybody, follow up on leads. And then those leads would go to the next day, to the next day, the next day. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they don't remember who I am, or
Right.
they
And
found
they've
another
already
solution.
signed up for somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where the idea started, like 10 years ago. And with the technology now, I can have a call center and agents, and we have 17 agents now working for me that make these calls. And so with the technology that we have now, I can be anywhere in the world. They can be anywhere in the world. Our clients can be anywhere in the world. And
Yep.
so it worked out really well. So,
So you're helping them, I'm not trying to simplify this, but you're literally helping them make the phone calls, the engagement to get that person back into the fitness center or to the facility or to answer questions. Like what has to happen for that conversion to occur?
yeah. So every kind of step along the way, except for the lead generation. So we don't do any kind of paid advertising or marketing for that. But once that lead comes in from somebody's marketing agency, then we take that lead, follow up with them for 30 days in some cases, and about 13 touches over that 30 days, and get them in for their first appointment with the doctor or the fitness center to then sign up for their program. So that's kind of stage one. Stage two is then working with the practitioners who are all really great practitioners, but they kind of suck at sales.
Hmm.
So then working with them on how they can do the sales or their staff can do the sales in terms of taking that lead, having a conversation with them, and then converting them into an actual patient and to their long-term program that they might have.
So getting them to come back, get in the door, to get them
Right.
to engage, and then enhance that customer experience. And that is that as simple as what are their goals?
Yeah.
What caused them to pop in and poke around the first time? What do
Yeah.
you want to achieve? Right? It's really that simple, right?
really is that simple. Yeah. And I have this framework that I take people through. It's called the what, why.
Mm.
So those are the first four questions that you ask, and it was exactly that. So what's your goal? Why is it important to you? What have you tried before? And why is now the right time to make that change?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the sales conversation. 2 seconds and we're done, right?
Right. Well, it, but it's getting, even when they're call themselves a salesperson, getting somebody to not skip the steps and just like here's the form, fill this out, right, and make it a
Yeah.
terrible experience. Just making this person feel like they're being heard and listened to them. Um, that's the missing component. And do you see that being a problem? I mean, it's a problem in the kind of retail space that you're in, B2C, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I see it in the B2B
Oh,
world,
yeah.
and it's just I don't know if it's bigger, but it's. I mean, I was having conversations today with a sales team about, look, they're my client, and they
Mm,
sell something that I wanted that I could buy someplace else cheaper.
mm,
Okay, but I didn't want to go poking around a website and like, hey, this is what I want. Can you help me find it? Right. And
yeah.
they add, that's their value add. That's their thing. They make the process easy in theory, because
Right.
they struggle to make that experience. Like we get all the way through to like the ready and place the order. And I'm like, look, I'm taking off my customer hat and putting on my sales consultant hat. And this was an awful experience because you never asked me once, what am I going to do with this stuff? Who's going to wear this stuff? Why?
Mm,
Am I going to a trade show? Am I going to give this away to customers? Am I right? You didn't ask me any of that. Had you asked me that, we would have you would have shortened your sales cycle because you would have been more specific about what you showed me.
mm,
You would have not had me go back with 14 different emails, right? I just went through it for the exercise so that I could come back to them and help them
yeah.
see some of their fragilities.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's a but I love the little the little nomenclature that helps somebody remember. They just got to ask like those four questions to be able to get them, and that'll open people up to a conversation, right?
Absolutely. And I don't think there's any difference between B2B, B2C selling. I mean, you're selling to people. So it's people doing business with people. And everybody wants to be heard and understood. And all that doesn't matter if they're working for a Fortune 500 company or they have a mom and pop, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same tactics that you use as a salesperson.
I agree. I think that's a good point of distinction, that it is people. I think the only distinction, once you get to a certain point at B2B, we're not dealing with the individuals got to go to their wallet to pull out the thing to pay for it, right? It's the
Right.
company that's paying for it, and
Correct.
that becomes it actually becomes a little easier,
Mm,
I think. But at
yeah.
the same time, if I'm doing living room sales, you know, you just don't leave until they buy. It's really that simple. They got to kick you out. Um, so, so in a fitness center and a chiropractor, nobody ever taught them how to sell. I
No.
listen. I was listening to a podcast the other day about a chiropractor talking, and he's like,
Mm,
"I spent all this time in school. I got an undergrad. I went to chiropractic school, and not once did they spend any time talking about how do I acquire patients."
right. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's in schools, colleges nowadays too. Like just now they're starting the entrepreneurial or salesmanship courses in college. But, 10 years ago, that was never the case. And nobody teaches you that.
And they're still very centralized. There's very few schools that have a respected program in that area.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with the fact that the profession is not um, respected,
Mm,
because salespeople do such a great job of making it difficult to respect.
Right.
They just they do
Yeah.
such an awful job. Um,
Yeah.
so
And it's also a heart centered, what I consider heart centered kind of business. People, want to help other people. They just and they struggle with the sales aspect of their job, where they feel like they have to separate between being that really caring practitioner that's going to help somebody change their lives to selling somebody into a program, which doesn't have to be separate. It can be together when you go through and have a real conversation with people about what, why, what, why. And then once they understand why they want to do it, they're going to sign up.
right, yeah, it's actually when they don't separate it, it should become easier because they
Mm-hmm.
understand their practice so well that they should be able to help that person uncover those reasons if they don't themselves. It's really that, I think, pulling that out. It's another good point of distinction that when they separate out who they are and what they're really trying to do and why they got into that business.
Yep.
Chiropractor wants people to be well and not have to be on pain pills and do surgeries and stuff. And fitness centers owners are really trying to help people be healthy, um,
Yep.
and make those New Year's resolutions come true.
Right.
And it's to me, it's sales is just a conversation where
Yep.
we bring some empathy, a little curiosity is really helpful, a little
Yep.
skepticism sometimes,
Mm.
um, and then getting to that why is critical. And
Yeah.
they want
Yeah.
to. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think salespeople are just problem solvers, right? That's what we do. Is somebody has a problem, we have to, one, figure out what that problem is, and then to solve it with our program or product.
If we can, and if we can't,
Yeah,
we shouldn't try to put a round peg into a square hole. We
not
should
at
say,
all.
"Hey, I'm not a good fit, but I know a guy
Yeah,
that might be able to solve that issue for you." And I think
absolutely.
people are afraid of that, especially salespeople are afraid of that piece.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And until you get that nightmare client that you've worked really hard to sell, just to sell them into the program, and then it's like, oh, why did I allow them into my program?
yeah, exactly, because it becomes that nightmare.
Yeah.
Um, so there's another term you use, um, impact pilot. Right. So talk to me about that. That came about somehow, and there's usually a story there. So
Yeah. Yeah. So when I sold my fitness center, I was kind of trying to figure out what to do next and what the next iteration would be. And so I was working with a consultant who was really about personal branding and, not giving yourself the normal title like sales consultant,
mhm.
where everybody has now a preconceived notion of what a sales consultant does, or fitness trainer or chiropractor, versus saying, like when I was in the fitness industry, is like, well, I help I help men and women get fit and healthy for the long term. And then people are like, whoa, what's that all about? And then you can go into the conversation. And now with Impact Pilot, people are like, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. And so that's how kind of the thought process came about for creating that title. And how that title came about is, one, I want to have an impact on businesses, so help them double their sales, and that's kind of my moniker. And so that's the impact part. The second is I am a pilot, so I have a single engine pilot's license
IFR or
and
VFR?
VFR. So I've
Okay.
not done the IFR yet. And piloting is all about just constant. You're always looking for something. You're always checking your gauges, your numbers, and so your navigation. Even if you're off 1 degree right now, if you continue that route, you're going to end up, instead of LA, you're going to be in San Francisco.
Hmm.
So it's all about adjusting as you go along. And so I really like that analogy of, piloting and then helping businesses have that impact.
That's a really, it's not cliche at all. It has real roots.
Mm.
especially being a pilot. And that's a great analogy there too, with the because you could end up trying to get to Houston and end up in Taiwan.
Yeah,
You're not
that too.
not careful. Um, and that's a really good marketing component too, where you're not. It serves as a differentiator without being um, trite about it, right?
Yeah.
Because you've brought somebody to kind of actually lean in and like, how do you do that, right? And
Mhm.
now they're gonna you can ask they can ask questions and you can share and it becomes that conversation that you're really trying to get to. That's awesome.
Yep.
So talk to me a little bit about the workbook and how you like using stories
Hmm.
to sell, because I realize I do that and I don't realize I'm doing it. I actually
Yeah.
have to put a governor on it, right? So I don't get lost in the story. I got to stay to the hook, the story, and then the call to action kind of a deal. Um,
Yeah. 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 So I put together a really simple workbook, 3 keys to doubling sales in 6 months. And in there, it's talking about what is your personal story and how can you bring that to the sales conversation. And people are always like, well, it's not about me, it's about my client. And yes, you are right, it is about your client, but they need to know, like, and trust you as their salesperson. And in doing, in telling your personal story, you're not telling it just to tell your story because it's kind of fun to do, but it's how it relates to your product or service and why you're so passionate about selling it. And I think a lot of people they love to just get right into the sales presentation, and it's just very sterile, and there's not a personality to it. There's not, it's just very sterile. And a lot of practitioners have that issue as well. They're just like, a lot of them are introverted and kind of shy away from doing the selling. That was certainly my issue when I first had my fitness center, and it was not something that came naturally. But once we lay out a step-by-step process to go through that conversation in a heart-centered way, then it becomes a conversation versus a sales call, which everybody just really just fears, I think, a lot. And it becomes a lot more comfortable and within their own kind of space.
you're talking about something that you understand because it's your
Mhm.
story. You're being authentic, right? And it's in the context of the conversation that you're having, right?
Exactly.
That's a big piece of it. And
Yeah.
how does that? Because because you do a lot of work on stage, or you were doing a lot of work on stage pre COVID times, um, and there's different methods or different objectives for being on a stage, right? You can sell, you can just be entertaining, you can be educational, but stories are critical in each one of those being on a stage so that you can relate to people. Is that really a strong connection there? Am I way off base?
No, that's exactly it. And I call it, excuse me, taking it from presentation to performance for more profits. So it's kind of the three P's there. So most people, stop at presentation and they give their sales presentation, whether that's one on one or to a group. So many people forget the presentation piece and the performance piece of it, because that's really where you get people engaged. And again, whether it's one on one or to a group, it really doesn't change much. The story is still the story, and the call to action is still the same call to action. It's like, what's the next step in the sales process that you want to take that person to? That's always what the goal is, right? So, knowing what that goal is when you're up on stage, then we craft the story so then you get that audience to relate back to you. So then at the end of the presentation, when you have your call to action, they're like, gosh, I really like this person. I'm going to sign up for whatever they have
Right.
because they understand who I am and what I'm about, and I trust them.
Because you've related to them as an individual, even though you're up on a stage and there's an audience. Doesn't matter if it's 10 or 10,000.
Yep.
It's still making those individual connections
Yeah.
there.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you know, I think speaking is an important way to reach people. Um, I hate it. I literally like. I can go have a conversation with anybody about just about anything, right? Individually, but it's getting in front of that group that has always been a challenge, just because I'm uncomfortable, not with a topic and not with that, just like I feel like I have to perform.
Yeah.
But when I'm talking to people and I'm trying to make a point, I'm using stories. And
Mhm.
I'm, one of the quotes that I use a lot is that sales is a Broadway show performed by a psychiatrist. That's a David Sandler quote, but it's sort of it's true, right? We're putting on a bit of a performance, and we're sharing things that are some entertainment, telling a story, and then but as a salesperson, we have to be that psychiatrist standing back and watching what the person's doing, looking at their body language. Are they engaged? What am I missing here? So it I do all of the things. I just don't like doing it in front of a group. um, you got any advice for the shy introverts that they should be doing something that just don't?
Yeah, I mean that's me. I'm introverted, but get me up on a stage, and that goes all the way. But it comes with working out. I mean, that's not physically working out, but just doing the repetitions, doing the practice of your presentation over and over again. So when you do get up there, if you have some fear or things like that, the presentation is still up in your head, and you're able to perform it without all the anxiety that comes along with it. Like even to this day, when even like going to a networking event and they say, introduce yourself to your 30-second speech. I'm always, my heart rate always goes up. I'm sweating palms and I'm nervous. And anytime that I get on the stage, I'm always nervous as well. But it's how you frame that nervousness into, oh my gosh, I'm going to screw up this presentation, to I'm really excited to share this information with this audience.
It's a really, really good point, Tom. How you frame that fear is allows you to channel that energy in the right direction. That's a really good way to look at it. Whether it is a stage or a networking group where you walk into the last networking event I walked into, I literally walked into the building and there were 30 people there. And what did those 30 people do? They all like looked to see who the person was that came in, right? And it's
Right.
like, oh crap, pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why everybody's there, and just putting on a smile and making that taking some of that pressure out of the room, and then going to find the one person that you, in that case I only knew one person, and that was all I needed to kind of get rolling. um
Yep.
but that's a really good point, channeling that fear into the right level of energy. It's great.
Yeah.
um and when I was doing I don't do a lot of research for these podcasts, but I like to kind of familiarize myself with what somebody does. And there's a couple of things that caught my eye was the idea of using testimonials and case studies
Mm-hmm.
as part of your story, as part of the conversations that we have. And again, I I do a really shitty job of that, and I know better. Um, so maybe you could talk a little bit about the why, the what, and the why. That would be
Yeah.
that would maybe start us off there.
Yeah. The what and the why of
Case studies and
doing.
testimonials, why that's important, and how that'll
Yep.
help us enhance our ability to double revenue.
Yep. Yep. So social proof is so important, because people, again, if they're searching for things online, they're going to be searching for multiple people, right? And the ones that stand out are the ones that have, the Trustpilot reviews, the Google reviews, the social media, the video reviews of people that have used the product or service and have gotten a great result. And I learned this, like in the fitness industry, is really good but kind of bad about doing social proof. The before and after pictures is always part of that. But what I found in fitness is when I had this wall of fame at the fitness center, which was also in the consultation room for signing up new clients. So we had all these success stories, just beautifully designed, had the person's words on it, the picture of them. I never did before and after pictures because I didn't really believe in showing that, just showing the person happy and what they were able to accomplish.
In shape.
And then, yeah.
Showing them happy and in shape and that they feel good.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you have somebody sitting next to you in the consultation room and they're looking at, all of these testimonials, it's shock and awe at that point. They're like, wow, this person knows exactly what they're doing. They can definitely help me. And then in the sales presentation itself, I would always pull out one story of a client that I'd helped before. And it was always a client that mirrored the prospect that I was sitting with. So if I was sitting with a 40-year-old woman, I was showing the prospect showing the client, the 40-year-old client that I'd helped. And now they can relate to each other. And she go, oh, well, if she can do it, I can do it too.
Right. And
that,
so social proof, but also getting them to connect their own dots, if you will.
Exactly.
Because it's like, if she can do it, I can do it. But it's also belief in that she can do it. Yeah. That you're going to give her whatever tools that she needs to be able to pull it off.
Yeah. And when you can bring in a story of how that person transformed from where they were, which is probably very similar to where your prospect is right now, and then you take them through that journey to where they are now that further reinforces that, yeah, I can do that too. And like you said, they connect the dots in their own head. And that's really the art of selling, is that you're not selling, you're allowing your prospect to buy, because now they have all the information to make that buying decision now.
It's really walking alongside them and pointing things out that they may or may not be able to see, and allowing them to make their own conclusions.
Yeah.
I've always kind of looked at it where I don't want to get in between the prospect and where I want them to go. Right. I don't want to be pulling them in a direction. I want them to be able to feel free to walk in that way. I'm not going to stand behind them and push either. I'm just going to give them free rein to go forward, and we can look at the landscape together. So that's it's great stuff. I appreciate. There's some really good points there. So I'm going to ask a fitness guy this question. I ask everybody, but does Tom have a relationship with cigars, past or present?
I do. It's kind of a on and off relationship from time to time. So, I think it started probably in my 20s. I have two older brothers. My oldest brother loves fine things, fine wines, and fine cigars, and travels quite a bit. And he brought back some. He went to Europe and brought back some Cuban cigars. And I remember just kind of sitting on a balcony, having those cigars with him, and just kind of sitting back, having a little scotch, and just kind of sitting there. And that is what I see a cigar is more about, kind of relationship building, or just like it's not like smoking a cigarette to get that little buzz going, but rather it's more about there's a culture behind it. There's and I think before the show we were even saying that, like, there's people that love it, there's people that hate it. There's generally not much in the middle, right? But for me, it's really that social aspect of just kind of sitting around maybe a campfire, having a glass of scotch, and just having a good conversation, smoking a cigar.
And that's great. I appreciate you sharing that, because one there's lots of different aspects of cigars from my perspective, but you hit on one that's important to a lot of people, and the cigar creates time
Mm-hmm.
and some space to be able to have that conversation with your brother and enjoy that view from the balcony and the fine scotch, right? And just it enhances that relationship, um, and it's not necessarily something that we get addicted to, right? I mean, that's a thing that people do get addicted to things, but
Right.
you have that thing that just allows those relationships to kind of go deeper.
Yeah.
And it's usually because we're just sitting there, and we're going to have, depending upon the size of the cigar,
Exactly.
20 minutes to an hour of
Yeah.
like, well, I'm just dropped $25 on this thing. We're not going to waste it, so let's just go have a conversation, right?
Yeah. I like what you said with it buying time, or it is time that you're getting out of that. That's really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it it creates that time and space, I think, to allow us to get out of what we do. I use them also for creativity and contemplation.
Mm-hmm.
I stole the line a contemplative cigar, right? And we, I'll sit down with a notebook and a cigar,
Mm.
and it occupies my hand, right? Because like my brain will go in different directions. So the one is making sure the ash doesn't fall on my clothes, and I got something going on that's tactile, but but that sort of frees up my brain to go think about the thing that I'm focused on. It could be
Mm.
writing a new program. It could be writing a new blog post or whatever, right? How am I going to convince my wife to do this thing that I want her to do? Whatever that is.
Mm.
Um, and it, that works for me. And sometimes it's about, I have a friend who just passed, and he used to like, let's get together for a cocktail and a cigar and talk smart. Um,
Mm.
which is sort of tangential, like you sit in on the balcony with your brother, right? You just want to
Yeah.
solve the world's problems with in that 45 minutes of having a cigar.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I appreciate the story, and I'm pleasantly surprised that it's not like this big taboo. What's the cigar culture like in Taiwan? Is that a thing? Are there shops around? People do that? Is it because people are
Yeah.
close?
Yeah. Yeah. There's quite a few cigar shops, and I've purchased some good cigars here. They are on the higher end in terms of pricing, just to get them here, but
Isn't
still
everything though?
very yeah, pretty much. I mean, the food is pretty cheap here, but yeah, everything else is yeah.
There's a lot of pork and chicken, right?
Pork and chicken. Yeah, absolutely.
And
There's beef too, but imported beef.
but you're not in. Where are they importing from? Because you're not getting stuff from China, right? Because
No,
not exactly
no,
friendly.
not really. Yeah, no, it's Australian beef or Japanese beef, and
Okay,
then also U.S. beef comes over as well.
okay. So I can imagine a steak is in whatever the equivalent of a 75 to $100 activity for a New York strip.
Yeah, I had a Wagyu ribeye
Oh,
that
it's a
was
different element.
yeah at Morton's, so it was the most expensive meal, but it was amazing. I think it was a $200 steak.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was.
Those are like a buck and a quarter at Gibson's in Chicago. But they do a nice presentation. They come out and show
Oh,
you the
yeah.
meat beforehand. Um, anyway, well, I wish you well on your little digital journey around the world. Um,
Thank you.
I would a bit jealous. I've never been to the Philippines or Taiwan, so those have to be amazing memories. So if
Absolutely.
somebody wants to grab the book or wants to engage with you, what's the best way to reach out to Tom?
Yeah. So my website, which is my name, Tom Jacobs, and it's JACKOBS.com. And if you do /3 keys, then that book will be automatically sent to you. So tomjacobs.com/3 keys.
Awesome. So I'll have that in the show notes if that's okay. And if anybody's in that space, because you work with insurance agents too, is that right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Um, they could use some help too. Usually they have a pretty good handicap on the golf course, but follow up ratio is pretty low, at least my experience. So,
Yeah.
all right, Tom, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No problem. It's great to be here. Nice to meet you too, Walter.
Thanks.